Okay, so welcome everyone. So today it is September 12th, 2022, and welcome everyone to today's Fireside Chat about blockchain gaming. In the past, we have talked a little bit about gaming, NFTs, and Gauss. And in our past Fireside Chat, we also talked about the future of marketing and the metaverse. And today we're further expanding that area into blockchain gaming. So like always, feel free to ask any questions you have in the stage Q&A, where we can go through them and ask them at the end of the discussion period. So joining us today, we have three amazing guests from different avenues of crypto. And for our guests, you guys can talk a little bit once I give you a short introduction. So we're going to start off with DMP3. So DMP3 is a builder, leader, and influencer in the blockchain and gaming space. He's the head of GridGraph, KlueCoin, Zania, and Goobers. And he is an ape among the cybercons. Before all that, he was a former engineer at Facebook, or now Meta, and CTO at Arc, I think that's how you pronounce it. So welcome, everyone. So welcome, DMP3.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And yes, welcome to Gus. Do you want to expand on yourself, or am I missing anything in the introduction?
No, I think you nailed it. I'm sure we'll expand more as the conversation continues, especially about blockchain gaming. I'm also on baby duty, so I'm trying to mute as much as I can.
Don't worry, Gary has some dogs that's always up and about, so it's all good. So next up, we have PJ Krypto. So PJ Krypto, he's a YouTube influencer. He's also part of the TCG World Metaverse public relations, and he is an overall crypto enthusiast. So you can search up PJ Krypto on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to him. So PJ, welcome.
Thanks very much, Alex. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's exciting.
Perfect. And next up, we also have, last but not least, we have Matt Scott. So Matt Scott is the CEO and co-founder of Little Orbit. Matt is an experienced entrepreneur and who builds high-energy, fun environments for growth-oriented companies with a focus on combining technologies, entertainment, and content to create memorable experiences. So, hello, Matt.
Hey, Alex, how are you doing?
We're good. Am I missing any parts of your intro, or?
Yeah, that's had I thought about that, I would have sent you a different blurb. That's kind of a nothing burger, isn't it? I've been in games for the last 20 years. I've been a developer. I'm an engineer by trade, so I've run a developer studio for 7 of those years, and then the remaining time I've been on the publishing side of the business, and so I've kind of worked in and around every facet of games. I've shipped over 22 retail titles, and then we operate 3 games right now, online multiplayer, either MMOs or MMORPGs. So it's a little bit more about me.
Nice. And I believe The Alchemist is part of your team, and I believe he's just here for posting on the stage board.
Yeah. He's our full-time blockchain designer and has really led all the C to E or P to E reward systems and tokenomics design for our latest game ships that fight underground.
Amazing. And of course, last but not least, we have Gary, who is always in here. Gary, our CEO and co-founder of Gauss. So Gary, I'm just going to give it to you, and you can take it away.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. And thank you all for joining us today. Looking forward to having a great conversation about what is a huge topic in this space that you're all building in. So I think first I'd like to hear some more about each of your projects. Do you want to start us off, Matt, talking about Little Orbit and ships that fight underground?
Sure, absolutely. And I think for the audience, like I'm kind of the rookie on the Fireside Chat today. My experience in blockchain's only been certainly I've been in blockchain as an investor, and I'd say the broad strokes of blockchain for a while, but in terms of GameFi or DeFi, it's only been about a year and a half for us. So with the project Ships That Fight Underground was actually a finished free-to-play game. It's an MMO. It's a classic shooter that takes place inside hollowed-out asteroids. So you're not in open space, kind of flying off into Never Land. You're inside these sort of twisting labyrinthine corridors and caverns, shooting it out on teams or in solo missions. So I think the interesting point for us was having put a pause on that. We got to the finish line. We had the the game kind of ready to go with a full free-to-play economy. And then that was late last year, and I paused it. We had brought the Alchemist aboard to kind of help us get up to speed, and I just thought that game really wanted to be something bigger and a bit more unique. And so that's what we've been working on for the last 9 months, and that project will be coming out before the end of the year. So I won't spend the whole time talking about all some of the the unique features behind it, but I really dig what we've done there. There are a couple key selling points on how it kind of integrates with blockchain that I think are really fascinating and really different. And ultimately, it's an current version of Unreal game coming out this year. So my hope is we can be out there with something that looks and feels much more like a traditional game.
Right. I think what we've seen in the PDE and blockchain space so far is a lot of shoehorning that into games. Axie being a perfect example. It's not a fun game. The tokenomics aren't great.
Yeah. They were progenitor, right? Like I give them full marks, right? I don't think they
you have to have the early attempts.
Yeah.
PJ, you want to talk a bit about TCG World?
I'd love to. And thanks again for having us here as public relations of TCG World, and also the one who runs the TCG World YouTube channel. I think this is a really good platform to kind of talk about our project. It's a metaverse, and it's a new gaming concept. We have some gamification I can talk about too as we get into the content, but it's an interactive world where TCG2 coins is our economy of choice, where so everything runs off of that token. The world itself, there's various things that we have in there where it's you hunt crystals and so forth to earn coins. You can also own land. There's staking of the land where you can have farms and you can earn a yield on TCG2 coins. We also have where there's capture and of sprites, or what do you call creatures, I guess, in the world. And there's a evolving process where you can actually get more unique type of NFTs that these sprites become after you collect enough of those in world. And we are actually looking at full public launch here at the end of the year in 2022. Right now we are in the alpha stages right now, various builds. We're just about every week or so, we're putting on another build for our users in the certain landholders in the world to go ahead and test and try out the game mechanics and things that are there. So yeah, it's a really cool metaverse play. We're really excited about the project. And yeah, I can also answer any questions later on as anybody has about the world. I put in the stage board, I put the deck of what basically TCG World is all about. And yeah, we plan to really shake things up quite a bit out there. We're excited about this.
Yeah, it looks like a great project from what I've seen. I've been following you guys for a while. I don't even remember how you first came on my radar. It was before the Wall Street Bets connection with Chris Barillius and what's his name? Jamie Roginski?
Yeah.
But,
yes. Yeah, they actually run our they're part of our business development team now. So they're leading that with Eric Chan as well. And it's really cool. They're making connections out there, getting the name out there. We've done everything organically as far as getting the word out. It's just been word of mouth. We actually haven't done 1 ounce of marketing just yet. And that's on purpose. We feel like the world should do the marketing and speak for itself. So the users will get in world, they'll play it, they'll talk to their friends, family, and loved ones about it, and yeah, that's how we're going to start marketing, and then yeah, we'll get more aggressive on the marketing with socials and things like that, and influencers and so forth. And also, a big thing about our metaverse is also getting these artists and these musicians in the metaverse as well. And that's another exciting chapter of us that we're exploring right now is giving folks that want to get a break in the real world that we all live in, right? And they can do this through the metaverse in a low cost of entry and low barrier of entry play, and they can get a stage and a format for people using NFTs as ticketing ways, get into those concerts that have exclusive access. So yeah, a lot of that's coming too. More to come on that, but we're in the early stages of exploring that as additional utility with TCG World.
Yeah, I mean, all of that last part's in our wheelhouse with Gauss. So
perfect.
We can definitely talk more about all of that future utility of stuff. DNP3. Do you want to be called DNP or Austin with this?
Either or. It's fine.
I ask because we have a bunch of Austins in and around Gauss, so...
Yeah, you could just call it. DNP's fine then.
But yeah, do you want to talk a bit about Gridcraft or Gridcraft and Xenia and Goobers or what?
Yeah, I can just give an overview of some of the projects and so thanks again for having me. So Clue launched last year. It was originally a token we launched on the Binance Smart Chain, and it was kind of during the bull run, and there wasn't really a ton of utility planned for it. I was going to build a wallet, and originally it was like charity focused, and I was thinking I could set up charities all over the world. And then I realized like it's tough to set up a 501c3. It takes a long time, and one month in the crypto space is like a year in real life. So people stopped wanting. Stopped. They kind of got impatient. Like, hey, how long is this thing going to take to build? And all this stuff. And so I realized like we need to build stuff that has actual utility and like create a demand for Clue, which kind of led us to a few initiatives. Like one of those being Xenia, which is the first play and earn Rust server, which is actually gearing up for launch. And Gary, you know it well because you did all the tokenomics for it. But it's this cool idea of taking traditional games like Rust and adding a Web3 element to it, which we also did for Gridcraft, which was originally, if you think of like Sandbox, it was like a Minecraft equivalent where we had different communities we've already built for, and we had tokens and staking, and we did all that in Minecraft. But unfortunately, they changed their stance, or I don't know if they ever declared a stance, but they just said, we don't like NFTs, and kind of this weird stigma of NFTs and digital ownership right now in the gaming space. So that's why I think you're seeing so many projects trying to create their own game instead of just trying to bolt on or integrate Web3 with existing games. And then finally, there's Goobers. So Goobers was our first NFT project that Clue launched, and we've been building a game for a year. It's we have in-house artists, the Sneaky Bros, and they've been drawing every single in-game asset. And we have a studio basically that's doing all the gameplay. So the first version of the game that we're launching, it has quests, and it's like a Connect 3 type game where you connect 3 different pieces, and there's power-ups and level ups and stuff like that. But it's a tremendous amount of work to build a game, even a very basic one. So hats off to everyone else on the call here.
Yeah, definitely is. It's funny that you mentioned that already. I actually haven't told our community here that I've developed the tokenomics for all of those projects. But now they know.
Yeah,
it's not, we just hadn't announced that relationship or anything publicly. But I think one of the interesting things about each of you on this call is that you all have different backgrounds, right? Matt, you have a long history of traditional game. You have multiple published games. You have a handful that are up and running still right now in the Web 2 space, and now you're working into the Web 3. And then PJ with TCG World, it's a very large metaverse scope project. And then DNP, you started off with a separate crypto and then moved into blockchain gaming, and now have 3 different games that you're working on within that Clue ecosystem of projects, and all the partners that are, with that, because you have NFT, NFT Llama and CyberKongs and a bunch of other relationships with that. So it's interesting that you're all going about this very differently toward very similar ends. I have a question for you, Matt. Right now, you have ships that fight underground, which is a more traditional approach into Web3 and play-to-earn gaming, from what I see. Does Little Orbit have future aspirations for a much larger metaverse, or creating a Little Orbit hub of PDE and blockchain games? Or
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I think the answer is yes. It's interesting because DMP brought up, the sort of the hate that traditional gamers have for NFTs, and I've talked about this a little bit, and I think it comes from two perhaps misconceptions. One is that they believe blockchain is just going to be an additional form of monetization sitting on top of the current battle pass or current Web3 monetization they're already paying for, like free to play. That's a legitimate concern. I think there's this sort of death by a thousand cuts mindset that gamers are at the limit of what they want to pay for an experience, right? And they worry that this new technology is just gonna bring added cost. And then the second misconception, I think, is that their favorite game, if they're a Call of Duty player or a shooter player specifically, right? That's the genre that we sit in with ships that fight underground. If they're a shooter player, that all of a sudden they're going to wake up the next day and they're going to come back and there's going to be some weird gimmicky breeding mechanic or some NFT mechanic kind of inserted into the middle of their game loop that they're not gonna like, right? They know and love their genre of game, and so I think that's the angle. To answer your question, kind of bring it all back full circle, I think Little Orbit's goal, as we're not the biggest publisher out there, but as an established traditional games publisher, is to help rewrite that narrative through our approach. And so I would say the biggest part of our approach is around user generated content. And so while we don't have it, like TCG World looks amazing, while we don't have shared world spaces or land in the traditional sense, blockchain, we do have our own spin on land in ships that fight underground, where players can buy. Basically, it's a modifiable level. So they get a small, medium, or large asteroid, as it were, and then they can build out their own levels. They have to play test them themselves and beat their own level 3 times. But then it goes in rotation. So I would say everything we do going forward on a number of our various projects, we've got designs to incorporate either play to earn or create to earn, CTE, sort of blockchain mechanics, where people can drive the content of the game and share in a percentage of the game's revenue.
yeah, I think that point, that death by a thousand cuts, you see it with, Destiny or Diablo Immortal.
Yeah.
I forget how much that costs to buy everything in that game. That
It's like $40,000.
Yeah, it's ludicrous, right? And I get that concern. I think another thing most players who are right now opposed to blockchain gaming, they don't understand that it is just another digital asset, right? It is, instead of having Warden solving the double spend or dupe problem, you have the blockchain, right? And that you can do a lot more with NFTs than is presently possible. That's something we're aiming for and working on with Gauss. And actually, we haven't had a call yet, PJ or Matt. And for some of our new listeners and those on YouTube, we're building a curated Layer 1 ecosystem. Our goal isn't specifically to launch games, but to build for games, for brands, this whole blockchain and NFT protocols that we're going to be working on, because right now we're kind of in the Pong era of blockchain gaming.
Agreed. And I think it's interesting you say that, because I think it's a dual-sided problem. I think we're absolutely kind of just embarking on this sort of second generation of projects, of games. And I think one side of the problem is just, everybody getting a little more sophisticated with the kinds of games that we do. I think we saw what Generation 1 looks like. And for better or for worse, those were pioneers out there, right? There was no roadmap. And so I think the other side of the problem is the players themselves, and that's kind of what we have been trying to do with this we sort of coined Web 2.5, sort of walk before we run approach, where Ships That Fight Underground has a complete free-to-play ecosystem. We didn't remove that, so that game has. Yes, I saw someone in the comments mentioning Descent, and that's absolutely the inspiration for this game. It's got the gameplay mechanics of Descent, where you're running around a level, kind of closed interior levels, fighting other players or enemy bots. But then there's crafting, and there's modification systems to your ship, and there's all kinds of other stuff. There's like 20 different ship types, whereas like the old Descent only had one. But the idea of leaving the free to play side of the business there, and then taking that revenue and adding it as USDC to our treasury to interact with our token, the SDFU token, when we launch that later this year, I think is a pretty cool idea. We haven't seen any other people do it, but we feel like it's a way, one, to be transparent, but two, to create a funnel where players can come. It's barrierless. There's literally, you don't have to buy any NFTs to get in and play. But as you start to play through levels and you sort of see over the fence at the player next to you who does have an NFT ship or NFT mods, and they are participating in the play to earn rewards, you see it. You see the scorecard at the end of the mission, and you realize, oh, okay, well, I got my stuff. I got my free to play resources, but I missed out on the other resources. And then at some point, my hope is that just by seeing it and playing a game they like, that they will want to matriculate over to the blockchain side. We even went so far as to build it into our lore. We actually have corporate ships. There's all these large corporations that own these asteroids you're fighting in. So we have corporate ships which effectively emulate, the corporation takes all the good rewards for themselves, and that ship can't leave your account. And then we have chain ships where you're a space cowboy. You went and bought your own ship, and you're playing for yourself. You keep all the good rewards, and that ship can leave your account, right? You can sell it as an NFT on any marketplace.
That is a really interesting take on it. So you guys you have off-chain and on-chain assets then. Yep. If I'm understanding where you're building correctly.
That's exactly correct. So the idea was complete parity. And in gameplay, like the assets are identical. From a gameplay perspective, there is no advantage in combat of a chain ship versus our corp or our free to play ship. The only advantage you have is after the match is over, you can participate in play to earn mechanics, or you can buy a piece of land and you can make your own level and participate in the create to earn mechanics. But for all intents and purposes, we wanted straight up parity. You're right, off chain assets that are free to play assets, and then on chain assets that are the blockchain. NFTs.
Right, and I think that's something we're going to see a lot until we're able to do a lot more on chain specifically, because you could do it all on chain in the future and still have that delineation between those. But right now, we're just at such a limited capacity. I already know
I think there's a little bit of friction there too, right? Like we have millions and millions of free-to-play players around the world, right? And I think the player base, the active player base of blockchain players is quite small comparatively. And that's because you've got to bust out MetaMask, and you've got to, it gets a little crunchy. And so our hope is based on our tech stack. So Little Orbit owns there's a gamers portal called gamersfirst.com. We have a couple million registered players in there. So the hope is that we can make that as frictionless as possible. Obviously, that system already supports all of our free-to-play backend and our paywall and our authentication, leaderboards, friends, achievements, all that stuff. And then the ability to attach a wallet, or even have a wallet created for you as you're sort of going through the game, so that, hey, when you want to make the side step, that your chain assets you've either been generating or that you want to add or buy or participate in a drop, they're all right there, right? We already have all the other systems, and we want to make that as easy as possible. And then, hey, if you want to get more crunchy with it and you want to move those out to a wallet of your own choice and that sort of thing, great. But I think just having a managed wallet solution day one for a bunch of free-to-play players that may not know how to go get or sign up, Coinbase wallets, they become more popular. It's just, it's taking, we're having to wait for some of that to catch up.
Well, yeah, in the entirety of the space, like I said, we're in the Pong era of blockchain gaming. In the entirety of the blockchain space, we're somewhere between ARPANET and TCP/IP. I've said that.
There you go. We're using Gopher.
Before. Yeah. And the user experience is fairly atrocious still. Like those who've been here for 13 years, know what it was like back then, and know what the breath of fresh air Coinbase was when it came about. And it's still very, very, very clunky. So I know with Gridcraft and that series of projects, they're doing similar with on-chain and off-chain assets, which has pros and cons. It has its benefits and drawbacks. With yours, I have one more question before I go to ask PJ a question. With yours, if somebody's playing your free-to-play game and then they want to convert to that Lone Ranger, not Corpo, role, do they get to transfer those assets?
They don't, unfortunately.
Okay,
there's no good way to do that,
question. Right.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking, because that brings up that it's problematic. It is a challenge to overcome that with the Clue ecosystem of projects. Like DMP was saying, I developed their tokenomics, and they have off-chain and on-chain, which isn't the cleanest of solutions when developing these things, especially when you're trying to transact them.
Yeah, we've had to be really thoughtful. I mean, I actually am very proud of our white paper because we really dive into how these mechanics can work side by side. And like I said, we had to be really thoughtful. There's this fun concept. We have a chain resource called Thorite. I'm not going to get into it, but we do have this way as a free-to-play user where you can accrue what we call unstable Thorite, and it's effectively like an incentivized reward to get you to hop the fence. So if you're playing on a free-to-play account or with a free-to-play ship, this sort of expiring resource that we have does hold an allocation of actual Thorite. So if you go buy a chain ship, then that Thorite becomes staked for you, and you can kind of unlock it as you play. And so you can't really exchange any of your free-to-play assets. Those, once you get them, then you get them, and we hope you realize the benefit as you look over the fence and go, oh, well, maybe my next purchase, right, should be a chain ship. But we do have this other chain resource that you can build up in limited amounts that we actually allocate out of the treasury for free-to-play players as they're playing.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that borrows from the freemium model with the ability to earn some of that play to earn, rubies or whatever it is in whatever game.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So PJ, what with TCG World, how much of what you're doing or your team is doing, how much of it is on-chain? And do you have an off-chain aspect? How are you guys dealing with that on your side?
Yeah, at this stage and juncture, it's pretty much all on chain. The interesting thing that we do at TCG World is when the marketplace does go live, and when we do go full launch here at the end of the year, folks that have a creative mindset and want to create their own assets and want to bring them into the world, you can do that, right? Using Blender or whatnot, and you could take those, FBX models, you could bring them into the marketplace and trade them, right? You could use that in the homes that you want to build in the land, in the metaverse as well. We have all kinds of, mostly it's all on chain at this point, but it's pretty much as far as your imagination can go is where you could take things.
Which NFT protocols are you guys utilizing? Are you sticking pretty closely to 721 and 1155, or are you working toward other solutions as well?
Yeah, right now we're on ETH in those as well, yes, as you mentioned. And so we have all our TCG Dragon Cave Club NFTs, which are basically they're the coin, not the coin, but the main NFT, the utility that we have in a world where you can actually fly your own dragon if you have enough of those NFTs. And when you think about how big the TCG World metaverse is, those NFTs can become extremely valuable for a number of ways. One being 800 square kilometers is how big the world is, so it's massive, right? If you go on our website, you go under map, you can see an image of how big our world is. And so we have different size plots that you can own in the world. But if you think about how best to travel through the world, there is ways to teleport from one land parcel to another that you own. But other than that, if you're not pretty spread around the world, it's going to be a lot of foot traffic to make your way around. So So there's things like vehicles that you can own by buying those through the marketplace, as well as these dragons I'm talking about. So those are available on OpenSea, these NFTs that you can purchase. And depending on how many of those dragons you own is the type of dragons you would have in world. So that's one. But our token is on Binance Smart Chain, the TCG2 coin that I was telling you about earlier. It's on the Binance Smart Chain and also on the Ethereum protocol. So we have our game token currently on those, but we are looking to add more protocols down the road as far as Polygon and whatnot as well. So that is definitely on the plan and on the horizon for us.
Yeah, so you're going to be chain agnostic.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yes, exactly.
Yep. So GMP, with the 3 projects you have under the Clue umbrella and the Clue ecosystem, you have multiple different approaches with Goobers, Xenia, and Gridcraft. Gridcraft's map setup and land is not actually too dissimilar to TCG World's. What are your future thoughts and plans? I know obviously we've talked plenty, but what are your future thoughts and plans or challenges you want to see overcome with blockchain gaming and blockchain game development in regards to that protocol, how limited we are with ERC 2721 and 1155?
One major thing I'd like to see, because everybody talks about building for the metaverse, and I think every NFT project throws a game on their roadmap by default now. Something we need, I think, for true adoption and to see all of the communities work towards an actual metaverse is a standard or some kind of metaverse protocol that addresses, hey, if I want to build for the 3D metaverse, this is the protocol I need to follow. Because everybody kind of stovepipes. All these projects either start from the ground up or they'll hire a gaming studio to build something. And could you imagine if all these projects were building towards the similar goal of, hey, this is how, this is how our community is going to be represented in this metaverse. And I think that's what everybody thought Sandbox was going to be. And it still might be, right? But you saw all these NFT collections launching these voxel models and voxel collections, but Sandbox never released. It's starting to slowly roll out now, but we're learning things like you can only fit 40 players in a 4x4. There's no programming language, and there's a lot of limitations. And so I would love to see something like that come out.
Yeah, I mean that's. Earlier when I said we're between ARPANET and TCP/IP, that's what I mean, right? We don't have unifying standardization or protocols across chains or across projects and stuff. That's something we're going to be working on. There's also a couple, I just posted in the board about the Metaverse Standards Forum. There's a couple different large projects that are working toward that, trying to first gather up people and then figure out what this intangible concept is, what the collective vision is, what the shared thoughts are for what the metaverse should be. And I think by and large, a lot of people agree, right? It needs to be some sort of interconnected system of environments and games with no real ownership, but you need that standardization or that unifying protocol to connect them. I was just on a call with somebody that we might be bringing on our team with Gauss, because part of our long-term plan, we want to build an AI translation layer to help game developers and game players carry assets from one game to another. So if you're in Gridcraft, you could take your avatar and a sword over into TCG World. Or if you have, a character and some resources and ships that fight underground, you could carry it into another one. What does that look like? I think it's something that's going to be necessary down the road that we don't have the tools for and won't for years. It's going to take a whole shit ton of development. Anyone else want to talk about what challenges you're having or what challenges you see coming up?
Yeah, I'll weigh in there a little bit. I mean, I think I tend to view it as just maturity. Like we saw this in games, have seen it over the last 30, 40 years in games, right? The sophistication layer from going like Pong. Great, it's a great example. I think it's one thing on our end that we've looked at. We own a game called APB Reloaded that is near and dear to. We've had more than 10 million players. A lot of players love that game. A lot of players hate that game because of its PvP model. But one of the things in it, it was created by Dave Jones back in 2010. It was his third game after Crackdown and GTA. But one of the things in it is this insane customization system. I describe it as Adobe Creative Cloud in game. So there's like a symbol editor for making 2D drawings that uses a really sophisticated distance field texture format that we can do a lot of things with. We can res it up and stream it in. It's fairly small, and then we have a projection system for 3D mapping those distance field textures in layers onto 3D models and that sort of thing. And it's definitely been or it is, I'd say, our next big project after SDFU to take that entire toolkit, as it were, and turn it into an SDK and build. We've had, like I said, 10 million players, of which hundreds of thousands of them have made art in our game using these tools. There's even a music editor. Someone mentioned music before. We have a 6-track music editor. But I think to Gary's point, having a set of standards, not that we're going to invent the standards, but I think that we have this entire Unreal based toolkit that I think would be really, really fun to open up to the community in a way where they can bolt that into games. And like you said, that portability, that promised portability of the metaverse could kind of be delivered on, because I think it is probably the number one thing that's not happening today.
Yeah, I just think that that hurdle is massive. And as much time as I've spent thinking about it, I don't see any other way other than having, an AI ML translation. We're getting there. Look at DALL-E and Imogen and Midjourney and all that stuff. And down the road in a couple years, I think we can have those solutions to say, this is what a voxel-based sword would look like in this other game.
Some sort of translation layer. Yeah. I could definitely see that.
Yep, it's all because I think we have that similar vision, right? Like the metaverse isn't Facebook Meta's blocked off ecosystem with no other in and out roads, right? I don't think anyone aside those projects really think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a large interconnected thing. Something else I wanted to go back to, because you talked about you having Gamers First, your own portal, in a Steam-esque fashion. I think something else we're going to see is things like Steam, who are taking such a hardline stance against Web3 gaming. Chances are in 5-10 years or more, I think they're going to go the way of Blockbuster, right? Because Steam takes 30%. PlayStation, they take 30%. Android and Apple stores, they take 30 or more percent. Meta wants to take 50%. And that's just not a model that will work, in my opinion, in Web3, where we're looking at building out ecosystems for projects where the creators, the developers of those projects, get the lion's share, and their communities also have that sort of decentralized revenue sharing off of play-to-earn gaming and things like that.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely think, I think with respect to taking these systems and sharing revenue, I think someone in the chat asked, what does mainstream gaming look like? What's a big win there? And I believe the number one use case for blockchain in games is user generated content, like the ownership and the revenue sharing. Like if you're helping build my game out and make it more successful, then either play to earn or create to earn, sort of the sort of newer spinoff of play to earn, that is by far at least something that is super palatable. I'm going to use that term in that, we mentioned Steam and their hard line against NFTs, but I think there's two reasons there. One is it's an easy position for Valve to take because of the current I think, atmosphere around NFTs. I don't think they had to think about it too long and sort of say, well, hey, we're going to come out as kind of anti-NFT. But two, and this is the far bigger reason, is they're not set up to financially benefit from NFTs, right? Their revenue sharing model involves them taking the payment and sharing the revenue. But the whole point of blockchain is decentralization. And so where that payment occurs or how these assets get traded around is not something that they can kind of interrupt or get their arms around. And so I think until Valve figures that out, right, how do you run a blockchain game in a way that they can make money off of it? Then you're right, they're gonna stay in their little corner and potentially go the way of Blockbuster.
Yeah, well, I don't think with a lot of them they can potentially evolve and adapt to it. Look at how bloated that business model is and how it's built around such a large take rate. I don't know what that even looks like for them. With Gauss, we're building what we're building, and the whole model for us is transaction based. But that's a remarkably small percentage, 1% or less, or 0.5% or 0.2% when we start getting volume. That's not something that's sustainable for any of those very large companies like Valve or Apple or any of them. Not that I expect Apple or Google to go away. But something like Valve very well could.
I think you can look at Epic Games as kind of a hybrid step in that direction. I mean, they pay out 88%, so they sort of split the baby there. They keep 12, and they've come out in favor of blockchain type stuff. There's no ban on blockchain stuff on their storefront. Obviously, I still think there's a place right now currently for the Steams of the world. That's why, at least for STFU, we want to be able to put that version, the free-to-play version, up on Steam, let people have fun in the game and like the game, and then they can always later come attach their wallet and jump into the blockchain side of it.
Right. That's part of what DNP was working with, working toward with Gridcraft and being a Minecraft bolt-on. That was part of the idea, that you could play it on any console, you could play it on Steam, on any computer. It was really lowering the barrier of entry until, Microsoft came out and said no NFTs. We're putting a massive kibosh on it. We'll block everything, which is unfortunate, but not also unexpected when you're building any new technology.
I think it's just very much in vogue right now, at least. Most big traditional game groups can see the way the winds are blowing, and so it's just it's in vogue. It's easy. It's an easy corporate decision to be like, oh, we see the hate out there for NFTs. We're just going to hold off, or come out and say like, hey, we don't support them, or we're not doing them right now. I think for us, there certainly is a bit of risk taking this approach, but like the more I talk about it, we spend a lot of time doing AMAs or joining fireside chats like this one. Thank you for having us. But saying like, look, there is a middle ground here. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be something where, again, laser focusing in on user generated content, sharing revenue, being transparent. Even the idea of taking our free to play revenue and being transparent about that, putting it in our treasury so players can see how much we're earning, I think is all super new and different. I think it's just it leans into that more decentralized approach of blockchain. I know I've had discussions with the Alchemist. One of the biggest things we're chasing, and I think would be the holy grail, at least from my perspective, would be to have decentralized servers. I think the day that we can put enough technology together where instead of going to private hosting facilities or even AWS, where the company pays to host those servers, the day we get to actually truly decentralized hosting, that's when I think blockchain gaming is here to stay. It's got a real nice foothold at that point because it can be run as long as players want to play it.
Right. On the topic of user-generated content, I agree that it's a massive area of opportunity. You have games, some of the largest games, like Sims, right? Sims is a huge franchise, and there's been so much UGC in that whole ecosystem. I mean, just Sims 4, how long has that game been out and running?
Incredible, right? It's had, I think, way longer than EA would have ever predicted. All right. Based on the idea of the community just keeps it going. It's all content.
Right, and I think in Steam, with most of their most successful games, you see a lot of workshop interaction that builds communities. They have a sense of ownership in it, and I think that being able to compensate them for that if other players are buying it for $1 and they make whatever they make off of it 1,000 times, 100,000 times, that's remarkable, especially when you look at emerging markets.
Yeah.
Which I think is one other area of blockchain gaming that we're missing right now, because you have something going back to Axie where there were a lot of emerging markets that tried to get into it a bit too late. The assets were well out of their range. You're talking a quarter of median income for one asset, and you need 3 to play. That's another area that I think we'll see.
Yeah,
hopefully a lot of focus in.
I 100% agree. I mean, I think that was never, obviously in retrospect, in hindsight, right? I don't want to be too critical of those guys because I think, again, they were kind of charting an unknown roadmap there. But in hindsight, I think that was never going to be sustainable, both from what you mentioned, like the barrier to entry became crazy, right? There was no way some smaller foreign market person was going to be able to penetrate, get into Axie for $1,000 as the barrier to entry. That was going to be problematic. But and again, this actually, so we ended up posting a bunch of Medium articles about various things we're trying out with ships at 500 grand. And the first one was this Web 2.5 concept. And one of the big things that the thesis there in Web 2.5 was that the problem with games like Axie is that the first generation was always trying to sell their stuff to the second generation, right? And then the second generation was always trying to sell their stuff to the third generation of players. And so you kind of had this unfortunate Ponzi scheme that was unintentional, but it seemed baked into the model. And so designing new systems where we don't have, it's not a land grab. The first generation comes in, tries to get stuff at a discount so they can shovel it off to the second generation. Once we've fixed that, then I think you've fixed a core problem in blockchain gaming.
Right. With DNP, a lot of what I've worked with them on with their tokenomics has been with the driving and unifying thought that we want to build long-term sustainable and thriving economies and ecosystems, not these hyperinflationary or, make a bunch of money quick plans. That you see that a lot in this space, unfortunately. PJ, we haven't talked, I don't think, about what the models look like with TCG World, but I imagine that's kind of what you guys are going for as well, right? The long-term sustainability and
yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be learned from some of these early pioneers, like Axie, but also, the other metaverses as well that are out there. You know who they are, the two ones that are out there. But look, I think it's one thing that TCG World is all about is quality, and you can tell from some. If you follow our Twitter account, you'll see some of the gameplay videos that we've been putting out of team members being in there and testing and all that, and also some of the landowners that have been able to get access to the alpha and do some testing. It's we're about sustainability when it comes to the tokenomics, absolutely. But as I said earlier, when it comes to the TCG2 token, our entire ecosystem will be built on that token. So, from the marketplace transactions to the farming aspects to if you want to level up assets, as far as even the sprites or that you capture in game and those evolving mechanics that happen there as well. Everything is going to be revolved around the TCG2 token. So that is what we continue to focus in on. And I think what you'll see is that there's no big barriers of entry for I think you brought up a great example, Matt, about Axie, where it's very expensive, right, to get to find yourself earning in that world. But I think when you think about TCG World, you can go to Ready Player Me. A link is in the that we're using for our TCG World is in the board. But we have folks that just create their own avatar using ReadyPlayer.me, and you can bring that into TCG World, and you're playing in the world. You don't even have to own any assets. You're just playing in the world already and exploring. There's $0 barrier of entry. Now, of course, if you want to start to earn and things like that, you'll need some land if you're going to do farming, or if you are going to be doing sprite captures, you can just roam the world, right? You don't need to actually have a car, which would be bought through the marketplace, or a monster truck for that matter from the marketplace. You could just roam the world and go and capture sprites and evolve them and things like that, and earn those NFTs that you can then trade within the marketplace to earn TCG2 tokens. So there's so many avenues and opportunities for folks in the world to earn. As you can see on the slide 2 of the deck that we put on the stage board there, there's so many different things. You can just live. You can create a plot of land. You can own a plot of land. You can build yourself a business. You can put up a billboard on your plot of land of your business, whatever it is that you want to do in the metaverse. You can create a farm, own a farm plot of land. You can farm TCG. You can just play in the world and go capture. I mean, basically anything that you can imagine is available to you in TCG World's metaverse.
Well, I did want to say that we're nearing up on an hour, so hopefully you guys have another 15, 20 minutes. And DMP, I've been trying to be mindful because you're on baby duty right now. But I have one more question for you guys before I hand it off to Alex for the Q&A. One thing I think we can all agree on that has been another massive barrier of entry for people and why we see so much pushback from things like Steam is that we have a lot of scams and fraud in this space. That's something we're, building a curated blockchain. That's part of what we solve for right out the gate. But what have been your experiences and what is your opinion on that in this space? Where do you want to see it go and evolve to?
Sure, I'll jump in. I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, I think unfortunately, when you have emerging tech like this, we saw the same thing with VR. We saw the same thing with previous iterations of new technology or new spaces or new business models, right? I think you're always going to attract a level of grifter. Unfortunately, right? They're good at identifying opportunities and good at selling. Not so great at delivering. I think with blockchain games specifically, you have this added complexity where games, I'm an engineer, right? I've done traditional engineering for business systems, right? You take a scope and you've got the requirements, you deliver the requirements, success, you made it, right? The thing worked. With games, you have this intangible fun element. And you can deliver the entire spec, you can do everything perfectly, but if the game's not fun, it's not a success. And I think that's where people sometimes trip themselves up. And we saw in Kickstarter, for instance, right? Like this is completely not a blockchain example, but you saw the same level of fraud potentially and scams. So I would hope at this point, sort of as we're kind of getting into this next generation of games, and we've got maybe a potentially different bar, a different standard where people are out there looking at projects they want to get involved in. And I still see a ton of interest in GameFi or in blockchain gaming. Like, I don't think any of that has diminished. I think just, some players just unfortunately had to get more savvy with how to evaluate projects. So I think to PJ's point, like he made, he's made several comments about how much, every week they're showing it off, right? They're actually demonstrating, they're inviting people to come in and get their hands on it. I think that's what you have to see more of going forward, is just more hands-on, more tangible progress. I think for a while that may prevent some of the smaller teams from starting with an idea and potentially using blockchain to fund their idea. We were in a position where we had a finished game, so that was pretty nice. But I'll go for that. We were in a position where we had a game that had millions of dollars spent on it, right? And so a lot of smaller teams can't afford to do that. That's, they use blockchain as a bit of fundraising.
Right. I mean, that's something else we're going to be doing. We'll announce the amounts and everything later, but I'm looking forward to being able to build out our curation process and have us act as a launch pad for a lot of projects so we can give them tools and resources to be successful.
Yep.
We can help them build liquidity. We can give them grants, that sort of thing. That's one of the other many benefits, in my opinion, of what we're doing. Being centralized. With the decentralization of the other chains that everyone else here is operating on, do you see there being any sort of unified accountability in the future? Is that something you want to even see?
I certainly, I think you will see some of it with the SEC. I think you will see some accountability, but it sort of flies in the face of blockchain in general. Unfortunately, that is decentralized. That is decentralized technology there, right? It's sort of like the internet, right? It's very hard to hold people accountable on the internet because no one owns the internet. You can work on preventing access, you can do things, but I do think probably what will happen over time is chain operators, yourself included, as you build out your layer one, things like Binance or Polygon or Ethereum, like chain operators, I think eventually are going to have to get involved a little bit to kind of curate a little bit, like especially if they see a repeat offender, if they see someone who's just blatantly maybe not, if they're a bad actor, I think they've got to kind of call it out. We see this in free to play all the time. Like, you can ban a cheater, but it's very, very easy for them to go create a new account. It's a new email and a new account. They can spoof hardware and come back. What you have to do is design systems that spot it sooner and sooner. So server-side anti-cheat. We have 3 different systems that try to address cheaters. Because I don't think especially in blockchain, you can just create a new wallet and come back, and you're
Right.
you don't have to be doxxed. One of the ways I like that a little bit builds credibility is I'm doxxed to the community, and I use my real name, and the hope there is that I'm taking it serious, right? It's my reputation.
Right. Yeah, that's our stance as well. I disagree that I don't actually think a lot of the decentralized chains will make steps toward it. It'd be interesting if they do, but that might open them up to legal liability for things that they do then allow. This is one of the legal challenges we're looking at. I saw you on mute, PJ. Did you have something to add before we go to Q&A?
No, I just real quickly, I want to add, I think Matt's made really solid points, and you as well, Gauss. I think with the best thing we can do, there's platforms like Telegram and Discord that have many ways for people to scam and DM you directly. And I think the best thing that any project like TCG World and others that are on here as well, I think what the best thing we can do is continue to educate our community and those that are coming in fresh and new to the community of the pitfalls that others have unfortunately succumb to, right, with scammers and things like that. And that's also just one of the pivotal things that we have with our metaverse is about education. And so we're partnering up with companies that are all about preventing scams and things like that. That they have authenticated NFTs, for example, and Reveal is one of our partners. So, we're all about ensuring people have the knowledge at their fingertips, but there's only so far that can go as far as helping people from being taken advantage of, right? So, I think there is a lot of onus and responsibility on projects, and I think one other thing we can do really well too to help prevent some of that too is just try to keep as much as everything into your ecosystem so that people aren't finding themselves to going to different websites or other things that could end up being a pitfall for them along the way. So for example, we just recently launched staking of our tokens on our own website. We've been using partners in the past, but we finally built our own staking mechanism within our own ecosystem on our website, tcg.world. So that's just one example of where we said, okay, we're not going to have you go to some other site where you may have a trip along the way and end up in some unfortunately a bad website, where we're just going to keep it at tcg.world. Keep it simple, right? So I think that's also really important for developers and projects to do the best they can to help educate folks so that they can hopefully avoid getting scammed out there.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to add, DMP?
Yeah,
I'm just throwing you on the spot, man, before we get to Q&A.
no, I think it was well said. I actually had to do a little baby handoff there, so unfortunately I missed that last part. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to pass it off to Alex. to knock out some of these questions. I'm looking at our Q&A sheet. We've got some good
Yes.
ones in there.
Yeah, so the first one that we have is by Zella Ray. Zella Ray, sure, let's go with that. And they asked that, what is the main difference in terms of security between Web3 and Web2 gaming?
Oh, good question. Um, well, I mean, I think fundamentally, I'll take this one since I do more Web 2 stuff, right? Since some of the other visitors here or the guests here, I think on Web 2, we have layers of security. So you inevitably, for a multiplayer game, which most of this is, if you're dealing in blockchain, it's going to be a multiplayer game. You're dealing with things like server intrusion. You're dealing with things like DDoS protection. DDoS protection being huge. Just any angry kid with a credit card can go typically find a site that will fire up a bot attack. And so you have to get pretty savvy with the protection you're putting around your network, because that's only going to get worse before it gets better, because I think there are things we're doing as a community, as a gaming community as a whole, that are helping to improve DDoS. But you have to have a level of security. Typically what that means is, like, you're creating an account, you're logging in, you're getting whitelisted into a network that you can then go play on. Whereas anybody paying for a DDoS, they're going to be outside that. They're not going to be logging in to DDoS you, otherwise you'd know who it was. And so there's just some of those things. I think there's code obfuscation, client side code protection, and client code intrusion, plus server side anti cheat, client side anti cheat. And then security on transaction side. So typically, we'll use payment providers that allow for tokenization of credit cards. We never want to be a target where we can either, one, be exposing personal information. So all player information that's personal is tokenized and or encrypted, and it follows regular PCI standards, and or credit card information, right? So you don't want to hold on to that. You want to work with pretty big, regular, robust providers like Stripe and PayPal and Payment Wall and others there. And then on the Web3 side, I think having your smart contracts audited. I know the comment came up, whether we were just using NFTs or whether we were doing other things with smart contracts. So focusing on ERC 721 or 1155 versus other things. And we're doing a bit of both. We have a lot of it is based around general NFT interactions, but there are some smart contracts, and certainly getting those audited and being transparent about that you're doing the security around, because we've all seen horror stories about smart contracts misfiring and things going awry there.
Would you say in general that Web3 and Web2 gaming, in terms of security, would they be on par, or would be Web3? Would Web3 be a little bit more unsecure at the moment because it's a new phase in gaming?
It's interesting because my initial gut reaction was to say that Web3 carries a higher standard, in my opinion, because I think you're doing all the Web2 stuff, and then you're adding all of the Web3 infrastructure. So if you're doing stuff out there, you kind of have a higher bar there. You're right. There's no one requiring it of you, right? So I suppose there are teams there that hey, if they mess up, they close up shop and they take their tokens and they go home. It just doesn't, where I come from. In traditional gaming, you don't have that option. You're dealing with the liability of being a game company and working with players and holding onto their information. So my answer is that Web3 is additive. It's Web2 security plus more.
Yeah, I could add on to that. For Web2, it's been around for a long time, and there's already established protocols and security. And I think, Matt, you made a lot of good points. But there's actual committees and security alliances and teams that have founded all these different standards for what are pretty common attacks. Like Matt gave the example of DDoS, or we've experienced all these attacks, and there's millions of players who play these games, and it's already pretty well established. The Web3 space is ripe for exploits because the attacks, they don't have to be super sophisticated. I mean, I got scammed, and I'm pretty well versed in Web3 and security. So I think you used the example of security audits and contracts, but there's also just a lack of knowledge from the user side that makes it dangerous for everybody. So attackers are getting more sophisticated and doing elaborate phishing schemes, and users, they don't check every signature, or they're just happy to understand how MetaMask works and signing transactions, and not everybody really checks what they're signing, and we see people get their wallets compromised all the time in this space.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I was going to agree.
So I think in the past Fireside chat that we had in Metaverse, and I believe, in the Metaverse, we were saying that people coming into crypto, it's almost like you have to get scammed in order to be in crypto. It's like a trial by fire sort of
rite
thing.
of passage.
Unfortunate rite of passage. I don't know which. It might have been the last one. I'd used the example of riding a motorcycle. Anyone who's ridden knows that it's not if you're going to lay down a bike, it's when. Same thing with scams in this space, unfortunately. But that's how it was in early e-commerce, before e-commerce was mass adopted. Nobody wanted to put their credit card info online.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have still a couple more questions, so we're going to get a move on to it. So the same person asked before, how do you deal with scalability of those games? And is there a problem? Is there a problem that blockchain games need to face in terms of scalability?
I'm happy to kind of lead on this. I mean, scalability is like one of the biggest problems you deal with on a traditional game. So we spend a lot of time with a traditional game going through tests with a binary on a server, and you put it in different environments, and you see how it scales, and then you plan for it, right? So you have that problem. I think when you add blockchain, you add protocol scalability and smart contracts, scalability, and I think that we've seen a lot of new layer 1, layer 2 kind of solutions to help improve scalability. And I think we're in the testing phase right now of whether that's going to hold up or not. But I think you have both.
I want to throw on another question to follow up on that. What do you think? Because I personally believe a lot of future blockchain games will end up having or desiring their own blockchains or layer 2s as they get more and more transactions on chain. Like an MMO, for example, if you could do every resource generation, every craft, every time you craft an item, all of those things on chain, do you see something like that coming to pass down the road as a traditional game developer?
I mean, I certainly think like Avalanche and Polygon have already introduced, super nets, right, or subnets, depending on our super subnodes. I think the idea being, you can take your own token, you can use that. You host your servers, right? You're already hosting them anyway, but it's less decentralization, right? So you're sort of trading some of the decentralized benefits. Blockchain for scalability, right? You're dedicating hardware that you're providing, and you're just using your own token for the gas fees. So I think that we're seeing some emerging solutions, but yeah, I think that is kind of the way I'm seeing people solve it. Gary?
I appreciate it.
Okay. So we have one fun question by Ferret. His name is Ferret Pew Pew on Discord, and I think this goes to, I believe, PJ Krypto and TCG World. Does it have any ferrets in your game?
Any ferrets, like the animal?
Yeah, I believe so. Well,
asking if TCG World has ferrets.
Well, good one. So there's going to be creatures and sprites that we're going to have at launch that you can go and capture. Again, you can go create an avatar for free, Ready Player Me, Get in World. And again, when we go full launch end of the year, this will become available. We've employed Mike Miller. You guys may have heard that name before with Marvel and all that, DC Comics and everything. He's a brilliant mind and has helped us with some of the graphic design around these creatures that we're going to have in a world. You could see some of the last slide page of the deck that's in there on the board. But yeah, they as far as ferrets goes, I think what I'll answer that is a little bit maybe indirectly, but as we said, the market pace is going to be very flexible in the sense that if you're able to create the design, whether it's through Blender or whatnot, you'll be able to import that into the marketplace, and if there's a market for it, you can sell it. But as far as it being usable in game, more to come on that and TBD. But certainly as far as like others being able to buy and sell as kind of like those assets go, as the marketplace is going to be very flexible in that regards. But yeah, I think ferrets himself, I know some people are pretty big fans of the ferret animal. I don't think it's going to be illegal in World, but we'll see how it goes. Okay.
So
Ferret invasion.
to sum it up, possibly, but not in-game use, I guess.
I think we actually have like 5 more questions. If we can get through them in like rapid fire.
Yeah. So we have one by Squid Hopper. He asks, how do you see Web3 working for account transfers and collections? So like an example that he gave was like Steam. I think Steam, you can do some account transfers.
So he's saying, do you think the future of Web3... Yeah, who wants to take that?
I can absolutely say that half of our customer support issues now in Web 2 are related to transferring items, or I got scammed, or something that with even a minimal blockchain implementation would go away. Like literally people's ability to move items on or off an account or merge, like blockchain certainly streamlines the ability to vet, who owns what, and allow stuff to, I've gone on record saying that, Little Orbit has a policy, by the way, that you cannot sell items publicly. We don't have that policy because we don't want people selling things. We have the policy because it generates tons and tons and tons of customer support calls when people, scam someone out of an account and go sell their stuff off. And so I'm very excited about the solutions that blockchain can bring for solving, customer support issues and things like that.
Great answer for that. So we've got 2 more questions, and I know that we want to be mindful of your time, so hopefully we can get through them. So Aza, I think that's his name. From your perspective, what would bring about mainstream adoption of blockchain gaming? Open to anyone, of course.
I mean, I could start. I think one thing that, for somebody who's playing on console, for example, PlayStation, whatever, they're playing games right now, and they're, creating these amazing assets that they're kind of building along the way. And it's like, okay, you finish the game, and then what? Right? You put all this time into it and everything, and then what? So I think what's really exciting about Web3 and gaming and all that we're talking about here today is, the gamers will hopefully, through education and explaining what, this is all about, is that they'll see the benefits of the fact that you're going to put these hours into a game, and you'll have something as far as real currency that you've earned, whether it's, through crypto and all that, but you'll earn something at the end that's actually, something you can take with you, right? And in our case, in TCG World, is the TCG2 token that you've earned through various aspects of as we talked about here today. But yeah, I think showing how, that there's really a true earning aspect, and you're actually able to hold on to those assets that are really yours and not the gaming console's assets. I think that is going to be the bing, that light bulb that goes on and goes like, okay, this is for me, not what I've been doing this whole time. So it's my opinion.
Would anyone like to add on to that?
I've said before that I think, to dovetail into what PJ was just saying, that is a huge part of the future potential here, especially when you, again, look at emerging markets, because, $5,000 doesn't sound like a lot for a lot of people here in the US, but that's half a median income or more in many countries. And I think that opportunity is massive.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes.
I think we have one question left.
Yeah, we'll just ask this. This might have been slightly answered, but why should a gamer who is used to classic games switch to Web3, and why exactly to your game? And what are the advantages that you offer compared to those classic games?
So that's the question, isn't it?
That is the question.
I think anybody building blockchain games today needs to answer that question, and that is that I think they just need to know the answer, right? There are multiple answers to that question, but I think that if you're just putting something up there to sort of include blockchain for the sake of including it, those days might be done. I think you need to be offering. And by the way, I'm not saying that the traditional player and the blockchain player are actually looking for the same experience. They probably aren't, right? There's blends of the two, right? Traditional players are looking for a certain experience, and blockchain players probably want a reward for their time in addition to their gameplay experience. But my hope, at least, and I'll let some of the other people respond, but my hope is that we're taking a traditional game, preserving everything that people know and love about that shooter genre, and running around and having levels and leveling up and harvesting and crafting mechanics, all those things. And we're additively bringing some blockchain mechanics that are really exciting. Like that them on their own, players would be like, wow, this is, it's exciting to be able to generate content that other players are going to play and compete in, or it's exciting to be able to participate in a mode where I can gain resources that I can carry with me outside. I'm not doing anything different, right? I may even be an influencer playing a game that I would normally be playing. I'm making, potentially making revenue off the stream, and I'm making revenue off of the play to earn mechanic. So I think it has to be additive.
Absolutely. So it is 7:20 right now, and we've been going on for
We went a
an
bit
hour
over.
15. Sorry?
I said,
we're
yeah,
a
we
little
went
bit
a bit over.
Yeah, so I guess we can end it off with some final words if you guys want to add on into anything, and then we're just gonna end it off from there.
Well, I appreciate you all, taking the time out of your schedules and joining us for this. It's been an amazing conversation. You're all amazing builders in this space, and you all have phenomenal projects I'm looking forward to watching evolve over time. Thank you for joining us. I so greatly appreciate your time today.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gary, for having us on. Yeah, I've learned a lot too from Matt's project and EAP's project as well. It's been a great learning experience. So thank you for having us here as I represent TCG World.
I was going to say the same exact thing. You get in your little hole, working on your own thing, and then you get to do one of these, and you're like, oh, hey, that's cool. I get to learn about other projects as well today.
Yeah, that's what I like about this format, having multiple guests on, and we just kind of have a casual conversation and go through some questions. Maybe do this again someday.
Forward to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, had a great time. Thank you for having me on, and really enjoyed the conversation and getting to meet everybody.
Awesome. Well, we'll have this up on YouTube later. I'll make sure each of you guys get the link so you can share it with your communities as well. And thank you for everyone who's listened in, for joining us today and listening in on YouTube. And thanks, Alex, for co-hosting.
Thank you, everyone.
No, thank you everyone for joining. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And yes, this will be up on YouTube pretty shortly.
Lo-fi outro time.